Hi, I'm Romy.
And I'm Nicole.
We are two businesswomen, two colleagues, two friends who had an idea and decided to do something with it. Over the past 2 years, we've built the Daily Drip, a media platform and community for the modern South Florida businesswoman.
From Palm Beach to South Beach, we've built an audience of thousands of local business owners, CEOs, founders, executives, and more. And we did it 100% organically.
Whether it's through our blog, weekly newsletter, social media, events, or even this podcast, our mission is to offer a daily drop of inspiration as you pursue your dreams.
People ask us all the time how we did it and why we did it. Join us as we bring you along our journey and the journeys of so many other incredible local businesswomen here on Her Pursuit.
Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Her Pursuit. My name's Nicole Mastrangelo. I'm co-founder of The Daily Drip, and I am here today with two very special people who help us make all the magic happen. And I want to introduce today Candice D'Angelo. She is the founder of the agency East. Welcome, Candice.
Hi.
She's one of our thought leaders, but also a newfound community partner of ours. And I also have with us today Elizabeth from Jude The Agency. Elizabeth's our creative director. And I thought we would have an episode today to talk about the relationship between content, personal brand, and the media. Right? So we know the thing that everyone wants, right? Everyone wants to be featured on Forbes. We all want to be as seen in, insert media outlet here, insert production house, podcast, TV show. Everyone wants to be as seen in. If you're a content creator, a thought leader, a subject matter expert, having that level of third-party credibility is gold. And so I thought today we would have a conversation around what that process actually looks like. And I thought I would kick it off by just kind of letting the audience know a little bit about my story, because my story is the reason the Daily Drip exists. So I started my career as a content marketer. I would help businesses understand the role of social media content, newsletters, promotional campaigns as it relates to their business, because a lot of business owners were really struggling and they were treating social media kind of like homework. It was like this thing that was happening out in a bubble somewhere, and meanwhile the real business was happening somewhere else, right? And so you were left with happy birthday Susan from accounting on social media. Every other month it was somebody's birthday or like an inspirational quote, and then they're wondering why social media doesn't work. So my job was to bridge that gap, right? Connect the content plan with the business plan. And I realized a couple years into doing that on my own, in my own practice, that this was a real struggle bus situation, because with social media, really, Instagram, all these places, it really changed the landscape of the marketplace. Like, you no longer had the choice of participating in social media if you were in business. Today, if you are a business owner, you are a content creator. Congratulations. This is just the world we live in and the marketplace we live in. And so I was realizing that, and I thought, is there a way I could create a space to help more people figure this out, be fluent in this new business language, and have fun doing it? And thus the Daily Drip was born, because I wanted to kind of also solve for the other problem. Was I want that third-party validation. I don't want to just be posting on my social media. I want someone else to share it and endorse it too. So I thought, what if we created a media platform that only showcased thought leadership, content creator content, and there was no copywriters or in-house journalists. It was all real people sharing perspectives, expertise, and stories, and that was exclusively what we were showcasing. And that is really how the Daily Drip kind of got born, with me trying to marry these two things and solve these two problems. So I thought, let's kick off this conversation. I'm going to start with you, Elizabeth, because I think if there's anyone who can understand the perspective that I see in business owners and the challenge with social media, it's you, right? So talk to us about the importance of creating good content and what makes content good.
Yeah, so I always tell people that it's not about the quality of the footage and how many,
megahertz.
Yeah, whatever. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. The only thing that really matters is what do you have to say? What are you impacting? Are you inspiring someone? Are you relating to someone? Are you educating someone? Are you falling into one of those pillars? Is there a reason why someone wants to consume that content beyond the fact that maybe it's pretty or maybe it's well produced, So that to me is what good content means, right? And I think what was the other part of your question? Like, why is it important to do it?
What makes content good? What's the process someone should think about? Because we're entering an era now where it's so funny because marketing really got turned on its head. It used to be a lot of advertising, a lot of the logo and the company pumping out messaging, right? And now in the era of influencer marketing, people kind of caught on to that. And it's like, oh, we see what you did. Instead of you guys pumping out your sales tactics, you're getting these people with lots of followers to do your bidding for you, right? And so influencer marketing was hot until it was not. And then people started catching on. And then you found a lot of influencers not wanting to engage in that kind of work because it was hurting their platforms. And so,
I think brands had to become influencers, right? Yeah.
And now what we're seeing is the dawn of the founder brand, the executive brand, the CEO brand, where the people leading the organization are having to be the influencers for the organization.
Because
they are the ambassadors.
People used to connect to logos, and now people connect with people. Right?
Yeah.
They connect. They want to know who the founder is. They want to know who the marketing exec is. They want to know, the story behind the brand. They want to connect with that because that's real. A logo isn't, necessarily. And so I think that you had to start making people care. And how do you make people care? By being vulnerable and honest and fun and inspiring and educating and doing all of that on social media. All of a sudden you make people care about you. You make them care about the organization, the people in it, and the brand, the message, what your whole goal is, right? And so that's what social media allowed to happen, is that instead of like putting a billboard out and spending all this money to do that, social media is free. Anybody can post, right? So it's the competition for attention.
Right.
And so how do you earn that attention from your audience? And you do that by creating good content at scale. And you show up for your audience. And it's not about, spending all this money on content. It costs nothing to make good content. Technically, it costs nothing to make good content.
I'll piggyback on that we call that free real estate. Like for Instagram, social media, all your platforms are free real estate unless you pay for some ungodly thing. But it's really free real estate that everybody should capitalize on. It's like the gold rush. It's like how America was built. Everybody came to America and just went wild and looked for gold, and then they settled. That is what is happening and what has been happening to brands and businesses through social media.
An opportunity. What an opportunity to be seen by your audience, to share your message. Like, it's an incredible opportunity. So yeah, it might feel like homework and it might feel stressful and you might feel like you don't really get it. But if you really put in the time and energy and you invest in the right people and you invest in the right tools to be able to make it happen, it could be life-changing for your business.
Oh my God. And forget the small business or the startup or the founder.
Yeah.
We are seeing Fortune 200 and Fortune 500 companies investing in their leaders' brands at a rate never before seen. And if you think about Apple and the story of Steve Jobs and how many people became attached to that brand, yes, because of the innovative nature of the brand and the products, yes, because of the sleek, clean, minimalistic features, but really people became attached to him and what he stood for. He represented innovation. He represented creation and creativity.
He represented their why, like they start with why, their whole brand starts with why. They don't talk about what they do or what they sell, which is what so many companies want to do. They want to create an infographic about all the different services that they offer. Like, nobody actually cares. Like, right. If I need to go do my nails, I'm just going to search up the closest nail salon. But if I fall in love with this one nail tech on social media because she's creative and she's cool and maybe she's funny, I will drive 30 minutes to go to that nail tech, right? So like, if I don't need to know all your services, I don't care what your product is. Really deeply, people don't care about that. They care about the like your insides. They care about your goals, what it is that makes you, what makes your brand unique. That's what people care about, and your mission.
Every single commercial from Apple is people focused. Like if you look at all of the commercials, they're about what they're doing with their lives with the phone, like how they're carrying it with them, the ease of life. And you're never hearing about the capabilities or the features of the phones in their commercials. And those phones are highest priced, right? People are paying astronomical dollar amounts to be a part of that. And so, like, to your point, like, nobody cares about the services. And I think that's where people kind of go wrong on social media is they're talking about they're selling, and that's their primary focus because that's the only real estate they can afford to do so. They can't afford marketing services, right? They can't afford those things. So they're kind of missing the mark with not showcasing their personal sides. And a lot of people don't want to either. And I can understand why. Yeah. And from any perspective, I can understand why. But there's a way to do it and to really inform the audience on how to do that and just be comfortable with what you're doing. But there's this give and take, and the pendulum's always swinging. The newest thing, like Apple, the newest phone, like there's always a new innovative strategy. It's really hard to keep up. Very hard to keep up. Yeah.
But I would imagine... Now to bring it back to you, Candice. So to remind everybody, Candice has the Agency East, which is a PR media relations agency. I got to imagine that somebody that's working with Elizabeth or someone like Elizabeth and is investing in their digital presence, in their brand, has to be hella easy for you to work with, right? Like I can't imagine, how do you work with brands, personal brands, or executive brands, founder brands, if their social media is not great? Like I would imagine you need that almost like a portfolio to showcase, right?
And I think that's also why they are looking at PR, because maybe marketing is something that they feel is they can't afford to do. Maybe PR is they can't afford to do, so maybe they turn to marketing.
Or maybe it's labor intensive. I think that's a big fear too. Really is that it takes a lot of time to do.
It does. So there's two things. One, when we talk about your platform, the Daily Drip, and we talk about social media and my feed, your feed, that's owned. We own that. Our blogs, we own. Our websites, we own. My Instagram feed, I own. But when we talk about public relations, that's earned. We've earned that. That's our credibility.
What a good word to use, because you literally have earned it if you get featured, because there's got to be a million other people striving for that subject matter expert commentator spot or that feature article or that interview. So I love that you use the word earned.
I think it's a really important distinction that people should know. If they don't know it before today, now you know. This is moving forward. And podcast, so this is, you own it as a podcast, but I've earned it as a guest. So like it works it's all at the same time, but the perspective's different. And so that's why psychologically and subconsciously when people look at, oh, you've been featured in XYZ, and they're like, wow. So when you look up Elizabeth, who's been featured in XYZ versus Candice, who hasn't, but we do the same exact thing, you bet all the money in your bank account that consumer is looking at Elizabeth and going, I want to work with her. Because that third party has vetted you enough to say, we think she's good enough to be on our platform. She has something to say, so we're going to put her on our platform. So again, your know, like, and trust factor is so fast-tracked with being even on one media outlet that is earned. Whereas somebody who hasn't done that, it takes a lot. Your know, like, and trust factor in sales, in your sales process, takes so much longer.
But that's the key. You have to earn it, right? Like you have to earn that credibility. And like people want like a fast, quick fix to everything. They want to start a business. They want it to blow up tomorrow. It's like, no, you have to build that credibility. You have to build that persona. You have to build that brand. And where people are doing it is on social media.
Another big thing I see as a content marketer is whenever I get a brand or a personal or organizational brand and they are working with PR or they are striving to get out, in, even if it's local media, there is a whole strategy then that you need to implement to showcase to the world that you have earned that media spot. And even that's a part where I see people kind of fall off. They're so focused on getting featured then they get featured and they don't know what to do with it. And it brings us right back to Elizabeth, because now there's a whole campaign moment, a whole strategy.
All of a sudden the spotlight's on you, and if you don't know what to do with it, it's going to dim eventually, you know? So if you're not using that momentum on social media or whatever platform it is you're using it on, if you don't use that momentum for good, what was the point, really? You know, the point of PR is to kind of give you that push, right? Like to give you that sudden attention, right? But if you don't keep it, if you can't maintain it, right, earn it and keep that ball rolling.
Momentum. And again, going back to like doing the work to do it, but like just to go back on what you were saying, PR really is about your credibility. Like, you know, if you are an expert in your field, and the thought leaders within the Daily Drip, every single one is an expert in their craft, and that's why they started a business. You know, being ambitious is one thing, and we all are very ambitious, but being an expert in your craft is another, and that's our job. Like, we've had people come to us and they're like, okay, we want to talk, this is what I do, this is, you know, this is my headline, and, you know, for all intents and purposes, but sometimes the bios are crap. Like, we have to go back in and we have to be like, none of this. And so we get on a call and we go through, literally, if you've been doing this for 12 years, you have to catch me up in 1 hour, all those 12 years. So really your bios should be as seen in or has won award for. You should, though, that's where you name drop. Don't be shy on your bios. That's what gets you to have that writer, journalist, media platform read the rest of what you're sending. So those first lines are so critical, and that's where people get that wrong.
It's so funny because it's just like with marketing, we call it the hook. Right? So like when you're writing your social media captions, when I'm reviewing for even our Daily Drip article posts, my job is to make sure that our team is crafting a title that makes you want to read the social media caption. The first line of the social media caption is supposed to make you read the rest of the caption. And if we've done our job right, hopefully you'll go and click and read the article.
And that's the same way we treat video content. I mean, every single piece of media, right? I'm always telling you the hook. It's got to be interesting the first 15 seconds or first 10 seconds or first 5 seconds. You've got to,
yeah, it's a game of capturing people's attention, even in your bio. And Elizabeth, you're famous for saying this line, but why should they care, right? So somebody winds up on your bio. Maybe it's because Candice submitted it. Maybe it's because they wound up on your website's about page. Maybe it's because they're on your LinkedIn profile. Somehow, some way, they wound up to your bio. You have seconds, literally seconds, not to make them love you and buy from you, but to make them want to keep reading about you. That is literally what your goal should be when you're crafting a winning bio. And part of that process is knowing your audience, right? So if you want your audience to be strategic partners, people that can refer you their clients or partner with you or collaborate with you in one way, how are you crafting your bio to speak to those people? Not your end user, not a client or a customer or potential lead. You know, we need to be crafting the bio in a different way. And I would imagine for PR and media placement, you need to craft your bio for a journalist or a media.
Your reputation. It's everything you, and we are so focused because we are solo entrepreneurs for the most part. We don't have this magnificent team. Some of us do, but very rarely. And so we often can't look, our peripherals are completely blocked because we're wearing multiple hats at different times. So it's really hard to see those things, but every move you make is your reputation. You're building your reputation. Your content that you're putting is part of your reputation. So if you're creating your own bios, create them not in first person. Like that is like one of the biggest things when people send us their bios. It's like, I started out in, I believe my mission is, and like that, again, you're not thinking about you're just not. And so you want it to make it sound like somebody is speaking for you. You want it to sound like you are being presented on a stage where somebody is presenting you. And so like those perspectives on having that really help you get in the door. But we've done this before in our meetings where like I have sometimes like my skin has crawled with some of the things that I've seen content wise on feeds where we're not thinking about maybe one day your son wants to run for president and you need to be mindful of that right now. And so like what we say, and sometimes like to your credit, and this is part of it, you need to ruffle feathers to get that attention, right? But be very mindful of that in the future on how that's going to come back to you.
Yeah,
So,
own it. You know, hopefully you can own it.
But if that's what you believe,
yeah, only if it's what you really
do
truly
it just to get attention and to
should
create
be authentic.
FOMO. It
Because
should
if
be
it's authentic, then in the end, it's like, okay, well, I own it. It's mine.
Really great point. Neo, this is pulling things that y'all probably don't know, and yes, I did say y'all. Neo had a very interesting perspective where he had a very fine and definitive perspective on transgender children and changing their genders at 5 and going through that transition at 5. And he got dragged and he was very eloquent about it. And he was like, I just think they're too young to change. So they don't even know how to consistently brush their teeth at that age. So he was coming from a perspective of, I just personally don't think that's right. And so because social media one thing can go viral within seconds, it will take you down in the same amount of time. And so back to your authenticity, if you own it and you believe it, and that's just your perspective, you gotta own it for the entire time while you're being dragged through the internet, and while and some people agree, but sometimes people will comment for the FOMO. People will comment because they see it's going viral and they want to be part of that viral moment. So they'll leave a comment.
They want the algorithm to stick to them too.
They want the algorithm to stick to them too. So there's crisis management for your reputation. Small brands need it so much more than these big corporations, right? They can go under the radar. They can. They have a legal team. Right. They can go under the radar for X amount of time. You cannot go under the radar. You cannot go under the radar. I cannot. So we need it more than anybody else. So we need to have a plan for when somebody writes something that's not so nice. How do we respond, and who responds? Is it Elizabeth? Is it me? And so if you don't have that, and so let's say you have a social media person and you have an assistant and you go out of town and this happens. Okay, you're flying out of town and this happens. Does Elizabeth know that that's her job? Does Elizabeth know what to say? So if you don't have that right now, call me.
And here I am, really trying to push people to the boundaries of vulnerability and authenticity to really share their experience. I think that is the magic of thought leadership, of storytelling, of sharing your subject matter expertise in the context of a story, why you came to that expert opinion through the lens of your experience. And so it is this pendulum and kind of a double-edged sword of pushing the boundaries. But I think, Elizabeth, you hit the nail on the head, being okay with any backlash you may get because it is truly your opinion. You're not doing it for the clicks. You're not doing it, for that viral moment. You're doing it to be authentic.
It's easier said than done. This is why they say social media is toxic. It's not just toxic to the consumer, it's also toxic to the creator, right? Because a lot of times, depending on whether you're a business owner or you're a content creator or whatever, if you're creating content online and you're doing it well, to some extent, you're probably being pretty vulnerable on there. You're sharing opinions. Maybe some of them might be a little controversial, but the goal is that hopefully you own it. Hopefully you're authentic to it. But that takes a lot of work. I mean, how many people can say that they're 100% love themselves or confident, can own everything they said? We're all still trying to figure ourselves out. We're all human. So yeah, it's really hard sometimes when that spotlight is shed on something that maybe you're still working on, or maybe you're still evolving and stuff. So being in the public eye in any capacity is always a little bit dangerous, on yourself, and it could be really hard on yourself. So I understand why people try to stay away from social media, or maybe they just don't want that kind of attention, because naturally it is kind of unnatural to have that kind of attention. But I think that if you come into social media with the right goals and the right perspective on what am I really trying to do here? What am I really trying to accomplish here? And if you can keep that clear and you're confident in what you're doing, whether you're selling a service or you're, sharing a mission, or you're just trying to become a content creator and share your life, know what you're signing up for. But being really confident and secure in who you are is very key, I think, in that too, because it's so much easier said than done.
It is so much easier said than done, but also we have cancel culture now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Right now, the internet's crazy with so much of that right now. And some of it's valid, some of it's just kind of sad. You're like, wow, these careers are just getting dragged.
But to your point, the internet will manipulate a story better than a news media outlet can do it. So now the news media outlets are looking pretty good in comparison to how people will.
Well, it's like the wild, wild west.
It's the wild, wild west. We were talking about, not me and you, but another person and I were talking about the Blake Lively situation. And it's all about perspective. Like, it's so easy for you to tell me a story and me go, oh my God, I can't believe that happened. And without thinking to myself with my own opinions and going, well, maybe she was trying to keep that pregnancy quiet during that interview and that lady pointed it out. And if you've ever been pregnant, if you've not been pregnant, but if you have been pregnant, you don't like random people touching your belly. You don't, maybe in the beginning, you're not sure. Maybe you suffered a miscarriage before. If you're trying to keep your pregnancy quiet and private and somebody points that out publicly, you turn into mama bear. Right. I've done it. I've turned into mama bear on some old ladies in Publix who tried to touch my stomach. So just a little perspective.
Publix, where shopping
is a pleasure.
Unless you're pregnant.
and seen. But like, if you look at that, it changes the narrative for that interview really quickly. Like, I've just changed that narrative for so many people listening who hadn't thought about that in seconds. So I'm a perfect example on how fast that happens. If you don't know how to respond, it's bad.
Right. And I think it's true, and I'm torn personally for myself. My own brand, Nicole Mastrangelo's brand, is, I'm of the mindset where I think if I had a strong opinion and I owned it, it really was true. And for the record, I'm pretty open about my opinions and I believe them to my core. And I kind of like to be on Instagram, or more on LinkedIn, I think, than Instagram, really kind of sharing my thoughts and my journey as I'm building my career, and like the crazy conversations that I'm having and the things I agree with, the things I don't agree with, and why. And there are times where people will disagree with me in the comments, respectfully though. I've never yet been on the receiving end of disrespect. And I think that's where people just go wild and get rogue. So
Could be because it's LinkedIn.
Could be because it's LinkedIn, although I've seen it all on LinkedIn. I got to be honest. I mean, I'm getting hit up for dates in my DMs. I mean, like, LinkedIn is like a weird place these days. It never used to be that way, but like
Dating app? I didn't.
No, it's not. But like, people are weird. Like, I will get all kinds of messages on LinkedIn. But my point is, I welcome the contrasting opinions. I welcome the dialogue. I never feel ruffled if somebody disagrees with me and says, here's why. But if someone came out and was like, you're a stupid bitch or something, like, I might go home and be like, am I a stupid bitch? Like, what the hell?
I think that's only natural. It's a natural
Right?
reaction. But being on social media more and more, you just kind of grow thick skin. And
and
eventually you kind of like are a little immune to it.
But what's the saying too? It's like, when you have haters, you've made it, right? You have made it. And I'm finding personally on my LinkedIn, the more direct I get with my stances of like, marketing's dead, like traditional marketing's dead, or like your product needs to be the best product, or like you won't survive in this market because of the impact of social proof, the necessity of social proof in your marketing. Like, I'll come out and say some really bold things and I'll get disagreed with. And it's like, the more disagreements come in my comments, the more impressions I get, the more people comment, the more my post gets reshared. And I kind of welcome that conversation, respectful conversation, whether people agree with me or not. I'm here for it. But I will say I have not ever yet reached the point, except one time on Instagram. I'm using my personal Instagram to share the story.
Media.
My owned media. I'm using my owned media, thank you, to share the journey of building the Daily Drip. And I remember this probably a year ago. There was a lot happening with the Daily Drip. I was resharing articles, podcast launch, all these things, right? And this guy I went to high school with
It's always the high
I
school
didn't
losers,
even
like,
remember him.
why?
Like, to be honest, like,
But
yeah.
that's the biggest flex. The fact that you didn't even remember. Like, who are you?
You know what? And he sends me a DM and he's like, oh my God, all you do is talk about this and like share this. Not everyone wants to hear. Like I can't remember exactly what he said, but it was along the lines of that.
Good point. You don't remember what he said.
Yeah, I truly I don't, but I couldn't remember the exact words, but it was something along the lines of, oh my God, another post like this, or you think like everyone's just waiting to hear this.
You think people care what you have to say.
Meanwhile, he's in your DMs.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so I thought about it and I was like, what do I say back? So I'm not letting this go on read and not responding. Like I'm not giving him the satisfaction. And I thought about it, and at the end I just said, mute me. Yeah. Mute me. Like what do you want from me? Like this is what I'm here to do. You don't like it? Mute me.
That's a really good point because that is on your owned media. You get to control. Now, we've had clients that people would go on Reddit and they were shopping around for group coaching programs and went on Reddit to ask the dark web for feedback on their experience. Not bad, not a bad move. But people who are on the dark web are different kind of people. And you can't please everybody. And so it happened. And it happened fast. And let me tell you, Reddit algorithm ranks probably the closest to YouTube than anything else.
It's pretty scary.
It's very scary. Once it's on there, it doesn't come off. Wow. So all my business owners listening, super important for you to remember, like owned media, sharing your thoughts on owned media, you should. And you can expect people to disagree. But when they go on not owned platforms and they talk, you have to be able to monitor that and you have to be able to respond. And so we crafted a response. Some people were like, what great way to like gaslight her. Like there's just going to be people on there that say things. And also we're going to have clients that don't take what we say, expand upon what we say and do whatever they want anyway. And they end up getting in trouble anyway. So if you hire me, do what I say. I'm saving your life and your business, but you have to be prepared for that, especially if you're making money. Yeah. People want to tear you down if you're making money. Yeah. And they'll do it every single time and they'll go on the dark web and you can't have it removed.
It's funny because this subject has come up a lot recently just with even in the marketing game, like this idea that like the competition is fierce. Everybody's out there doing it. Everyone's online. And this idea that like marketing has boiled down to personal branding and social proof and user-generated content, right? So it really puts the emphasis right back on the product and the experience so much more than ever before because you are relying on your consumer to be your marketing vehicle then. You need them to post and talk about how great the experience was, but we're always thinking of social proof in a positive light. We're thinking of it as a referral and a review and a testimonial, but I would argue most of the word of mouth is negative. You probably have far more detractors than you have promoters out there, and it works both ways. And so back to content and product, one of the values of the Daily Drip that I hold on to with rigor is this idea of integrity. Integrity in your word and the content you put out, to your point, Elizabeth, that you own it, that you believe it truly. You're not doing it for clickbait. You really believe the things you're saying and you want to share them. They're going to be agreed with, disagreed with, but they're yours. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with your product and your experience. You must build with integrity. And maybe it won't be perfect year 1, year 2, year 5. It should be a moving target, in my personal opinion. It should keep getting better and better. But at the end of the day, you've got to work with such integrity, not only because marketing has shifted, but also because of these detractors and this cancel culture and this dark web and all these things that are out there. You have no choice but to create the best product, service, and experience you possibly can. You have no choice.
Don't underestimate your customer. because thanks to social media, they probably have just as much power as you do.
Well, don't underestimate the person that wants their 5 minutes of claim to fame, because you have a platform that can get you there within seconds, and everybody wants that. Everybody doesn't want to pay for that either. They want to do it. So they're going to go against the grain, because they realize that those that go against the grain and speak whatever it is that's on their mind are going to be the ones that get that attention. And so, like, don't discount those people either, and they're always going to be there. It's just a game of chess.
Yeah. And you know, I think it's not all bad. I don't want this episode to scare anybody, because at the end of the day, there are incredible, talented people with remarkable stories, truly, and experiences and things that the world at large wants to hear. I think that's a big thing we tell ourselves, like, who cares what I have to say? At least in the thought leadership program for the Daily Drip, every time we get a new thought leader, this subject comes up for them in their onboarding and orientation is, you know, I can't believe I'm doing this. I don't know if people are even going to care what I write or if they're going to read it. And the reality is they do. They care, and they read it, and they share it, and they send it to friends, and they comment on the post.
Because they want to see if someone else thinks like they do, has the same thoughts as they do, because they feel like so against the grain, or they don't agree with that, but they're not out to hurt anybody, so they don't speak it.
The whole I feel like the whole antithesis of social media is just connection. Like, people just want to be able to connect, you know? So when authentically. And so, like, that's, yeah, I mean, social media could be a scary place, and we've just talked about that, but also it could be an incredible place to level up your product. Like, maybe you're listening to your consumer and you're like, wait, this could be better. And so it like completely transforms your business. It challenges you. It helps you understand and listen to your consumer and have a more intimate relationship with them, and that's powerful too. So, like, yeah, of course things can go wrong, just like anything, but I think overall it's important to go into it authentically, to own what you say, and to go into it confidently, right?
And I think I've seen that firsthand from the Daily Drip, just to see the incredible power of content, the positive power, you know, to see when that power goes right, you know, when people are sharing their stories. And I mean, I've gone to events and had people come up to me, and you know, I had one woman who told me she listens to our podcast every morning, even if it's the same episode or we haven't dropped a new one. She listens to it every morning. It makes her feel like she's not alone. She's in finance. She's in a pretty high level role. And she feels like when she listens to our podcast, she has friends, and she's around the table with us, and she feels understood. I've had other people tell us, oh my God, your newsletter last week, I printed that article out. It's pinned on my corkboard. Like, I needed that. And that's content can make people feel that way. That's pretty incredible. So I think for me personally, I will more often than not advocate for people to share their story, to amplify their voice. And I love that the Daily Drip can be the very perfect starting point for that. And I think that's what kind of began our relationship, Candice, of going deeper, because 3 years into the Daily Drip, I realized, wow, the Daily Drip really grew. We're a membership platform, so all of our content is created by our membership community. These are local South Florida professional women who want to learn how to tell their story. They're maybe new to podcasting, blogging, content creation. And so this is a safe place for them to learn, to collaborate, to create without the pressure. We polish it up, make it look perfect, and then put it out on our platform, right? But what was happening over 3 years was people were catching the bug. Like, they were liking this. They were seeing it isn't as overwhelming and daunting as they thought it was. They were learning about the processes. Now they're bringing it back to the lab in their businesses.
Yeah, and doing it themselves.
Yeah, now they're creating on their own. And it got me thinking, I want to continue to fuel this fire. So I don't want the Daily Drip to be the last stop on the train, but the first stop on the train. And that's why I think partnering with you, Candice, and the Agency East for PR and media relations was the next logical progression for us, because it's like, can we take someone who's never done this before, teach them how, help them create, showcase, but can we get them endorsed? Can we get them earned media elsewhere? like bigger stages, bigger audiences. And so can you talk to us a little bit in this episode about what would be your best advice for that person who's maybe a year in, maybe they came through the Daily Drip, or maybe they're watching YouTube videos. I don't know where they're getting their info from, but they're learning, they're creating, they're kind of getting some traction. They're not, influencer status, but they're getting traction. They're figuring out how to integrate content into their brand, into their business plan, and they feel like they have something to say. What would you give them as advice for things to do, things to consider in order to be eligible for earned media? Like, what should they know that a journalist or media outlet is looking for?
Absolutely. This is our strategy. So get your pens out, your papers out. I'm giving you the strategy. The women that come to us have little to no press. That's who we want. And so our strategy is always podcast interviews first, because it's all here. And so as soon as you talk to somebody, it sometimes comes out jumbled. You're not sure which angle to take. You're not sure which direction to go. And so by guesting on podcasts, you're speaking over and over and over again your message. You're refining your message. You're teaching yourself your story. But also that helps in the interview process, because that's what we do. We get you interviews with big media outlets. And so you're going to start honing in on your interview skills, exactly how to respond to certain questions. So it's practice, it's in the moment. And so it's raw. Your first time is probably going to feel like a failure, and we want that. I want you to fail your first time. I want you to fail your second time, but you're going to start getting better the more you do it. So first off, guest interviews on podcasts, always number one. Then we take that and we leverage all of your placements, and we put that into Catch Me in Action here. So you send that out. Here's what I can speak on. You build your speaking topics based on what you've been talking about in your interviews.
I love what you said to me. When Candice first started representing me, she said to me, Nicole, what could you speak about if you were sleeping and drunk? I never forgot that.
Yeah.
And it was like, yeah, that's a good point. Like, what do I not have to prepare for to have a conversation?
The most natural parts of your brain are often really like trampled on, because you're trying so hard to perfect what you're going to say and come across as something so valuable. But what's really valuable is what's natural to you. So that's why I said, like, what are 5 topics, and this is in your application, what are 5 topics that you can contribute to right now? But we don't say the part if you're drunk and asleep. But the point is, like,
she really will say that to you guys.
I'll say that to you, and if I'm asking you. But the point is, like, what's natural? Because that's going to be endless amounts of information that you can give to a writer and a journalist. And that holds your perspective. That effortless conversation holds your true perspective on how this sits with you and what you want to get out. It's not practice makes perfect. It's practice makes progress. And so that's why those interviews are so important to getting those media features, because even the writer then, when we send out your one sheet, sees all of the opportunities and options and endless amounts of conversation pieces that they can get from you in that one interview.
Right. Like, they may not use you for the one at hand,
Correct.
But you just gave them a trigger to say, oh, but I could use her for this.
Or I have a piece I'm working on for 2 months from now. I started working on it. You'd be a better fit for that. And that one I can do alone with you. I don't have to share the spotlight with 2 other people. So we do that to, we want to give more opportunities each time we reach out. We're not reaching out for that one thing. I'm adding something else where they go, And I've had writers come back. They didn't take a client on the first one, but they came back and were like, hey, I'm writing a piece on this. Do you think your client would be good for it? That's the gold for us.
Yeah. And I think for anyone listening, how I would explain this after working with you now, Candice, is it's almost like you have actual personal relationships with a lot of these people in the press. It's not, just willy-nilly cold outreach. Like, these are people she's worked with for years. And it kind of reminds me of networking and how I've built my business. And it's like, instead of me having to go and attempt to network with journalists and media professionals, I kind of have you representing me doing the networking on my behalf. So they're equally knocking on Candice's door as she's knocking on their door. They are going to you for your roster of subject matter experts because you've kind of built your reputation on I'm the person who is representing the hidden gems, the diamonds in the rough. So if you need fresh faces, fresh voices, you can count on me to bring the quality. And I only learned that through working with Candice, but it's been really interesting to see the things that people have requested of her. And she's then reached out to me and said, Nicole, I'm being asked for this, and I think you'd be a good fit. Can you turn this around? Can you answer these questions? Can you speak on this? And so it's kind of interesting to see how behind the scenes, how the big media kind of works, but it's a whole network like anything else.
Media agent. That's like how I'm your media broker. I'm your agent. Like, we represent you. And maybe this is a fault of ours, but we always go for top, this is a Daniel Wakefield plug, but top tier publications. Like, we do. I kind of skim past the little guys. I always go for the top guys. And then there's that secondary where it's like your medium guys, but that's what I do. Like, I want you to be in Forbes. I want you to be an entrepreneur, and you might have to expose yourself a little bit. Like, that's another thing that you have to think about. It's like, it's great for your expertise if you're a marketing professional or if you're a PR person, but like, that's one part. If you want media to back you in your business, you're going to have to get a little vulnerable. Are you willing to talk about what it's like to be a mother of 3 children owning 2 businesses? They're all in football, and your content person's coming on Monday to shoot you for 4 hours. So are you depressed at the end of the day? Did you eat?
Right.
The
answer is
always no to that. Did you cry after? Are you willing to talk about, you want to talk about your success. Are you willing to show and verify the funds for that? And we've been asked that. We've been asked that twice.
Wow.
So it's getting harder.
Well, I got to imagine, because I would imagine a very major media outlet has as much to risk as they do to gain, because if they showcase someone that is not who they say they are, it's really their brand and reputation that's on the line. So I can understand maybe some level of vetting process. Even some of the things you've brought past my desk, it's like, whoa, I didn't expect to be asked in this way or to this extent. And, I think understanding that maybe some of that won't end up in the article, but it's part of their vetting process.
Their vetting process. And I, as a publicist and a PR professional, I totally get it. Yeah. Because, and some writers, I'll pitch outbound completely cold, meaning I've never spoken to this person before. And they'll email me back, are they willing to provide documentation? Because there's a ton of rags to riches story. There's a ton of make it or break it stories, but they need to be able to prove that. And here's some of them are just so great. They're like, here's 3 of my articles. They're going to look like this. Please let me know if they're prepared for this.
What are some of the things, like, if you had to make a checklist and someone was like, I want to be featured in Forbes, okay? Like, I want you to imagine the go-getter, like, entrepreneur person coming to you and saying, I want to be featured on all the big ones. Like, what's the checklist?
Yeah,
like,
I love this question because it happens all the time.
Yeah.
People are like, I want to be featured in Forbes. Can you do it for me? I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that to me. I mean, like, this is really the question. Yeah. It's like, why? To your point, why should they care? Mm-hmm. And it's really, you think you're coming to the game with, I generated 6 figures in my first year. Great. But what were the struggles? Where did you almost quit your job and throw it all in? Did you get a divorce during that time? Was your kid hospitalized during that time? Unfortunately, these are the stories that people read. So if you're, willing to be vulnerable in that, that's what we're looking for. Your expertise is just, honestly, the top. It's just it's
barrier to entry and minimum barrier to entry.
And we're all doing it, right? We are all owning a business. So what's your angle that's different than others? Because that's what people want to hear, that you slept on an air mattress after getting fired from your own company and then you rebuilt. That's the story. Are you willing to talk about that? So that's one. The other one is sometimes they don't want to hear about your business. That's actually more along the lines. Like, we'll get interviews for for your business, your expertise, what's up here, and like how can people change their lives from what you have to say, that's definitely, you have to check that mark. Have you won awards? Have you been asked to speak on a platform before? It's not really your perspective that people care so much about. It's your story. Do you have a story? And not, I bootstrap my business. That's not a story anymore. It used to be. So that's also our job, is to know what's trending and know what the story is. I'll interview you. You know it. I'll interview you and I'll ask you very hard questions. So the checklist is, what's your story that goes beyond your business and your expertise? And are you willing to be vulnerable to talk about how really hard this was? Are you in the negative in your bank account every single month, but yet you're paying your team, you're keeping the lights on at home. Maybe you're feeding your children, but you're not feeding yourself. Okay. These are the stories. These are the things that get pressed. Forbes, it's a really great platform. Entrepreneur Inc. is a really great platform. But a lot of them are pay to play now. You can pay to be a writer in Forbes.
Forbes Council. But once you stop paying to play, you're no longer linked to that article. It just says former council member, and you've just given them content for their platform. So like, if you have questions, call me, I'll answer them, because there's a lot.
So step one, you have to have a great story that's like compelling and interesting, right? Obviously, who else is going to want to write about you, right? Yeah. But tell me some other things. Like if I like give a checklist that like somebody would need to have it all checked off before coming to talk to you.
All right. Do you have accomplishments and accolades that take you out of a saturated market and highlights you? Are you willing to be vulnerable with your personal story? And does your personal story is almost detrimental to your existence? Like, we really have to think like that. Is your expertise different than any other marketing professional? Like, can you be in an op-ed that can get views? And I think everybody feels that way about themselves, but I guess I'll be the judge of that, right? So like, traditional marketing is dead. Understood. But why? Right. You know, like, prove it. And can you prove it? Are you willing to prove it with documentation? Those are my big checklists.
I have another question, and this one I'm pointing to you.
Oh, wait, I need to focus.
Focus. We've had several instances where thought leaders have worked with Candice, and she's got them featured
right away.
Right away. I'm talking within the first 60 days and in major media outlets. What, Elizabeth, would your advice be to that client if they were working with you on how to leverage those placements now? What would be your checklist for what to do? Yeah. So you got placed in AOL or whatever. What was that outlet? Travel and Leisure. That's right. Kelly Tolliday got featured. Kelly Tolliday is one of our thought leaders who has a travel agency. She does group retreats, and she started working with you and told you her dream was to be featured in Travel and Leisure. And how fast? Month two.
We got
60
her every
days.
month. She gets a placement. Her first one was Go Banking Rates about Hawaii. Second one was Travel and Leisure. I mean, we get her placed every month.
So what would you advise Kelly to do now that she's been featured?
So step one, don't just take a screenshot of the article, post it, and call it a day. Don't do that. Okay?
Damn it.
Like, you can do it, but let's not make that your whole content strategy. Okay. I think that when we think about video content, for example, I think that there's so many things you can do with an article that you're featured in. You can do a story time, how I got featured in Travel and Leisure. And then you can go into your whole career story. So I started out and I did this, I built this business, and then all of a sudden I'm featured in Travel and Leisure. You might use it as a hook, for example. Use the Travel and Leisure as a hook of like, okay, I just got featured here. I'm cool and I know what I'm talking about. Now let me explain to you how I got here. And then you can do a whole story time video. That would be a great video piece of content. It would connect with your audience. They'd get to know you better, and you're building credibility because you're mentioning it. And honestly, milk it. Like, I think that you should use it probably in a lot of video content. You could also do green screen recording videos where you talk about maybe a section of the article and you're like, well, let's say I mean, I don't know what the travel and leisure article was about, but let's say it was about Hawaii or whatever. Maybe that section of the article was like why you need to go to this specific island in Hawaii. Then you can do a whole video talking about that. Oh, and by the way, if you want to read more, it's in my travel and leisure article, whatever, that I was featured in. So there's so many ways that you can like creatively do that. And on video content wise, you can also make graphics about it. You can pull that content apart into small pieces, you know. It's endless.
It really is endless. But I'll add to that because she has a podcast, and envisioning, I'm Kelly, and then I've even been featured in an article in Travel and Leisure about this, and then you go into it. Like it's a really good plug, and it's like while people listen, it's like, whoa, they caught that.
It's designed. That's what it should be. That's what it should be, right? Like if you're doing PR and you're trying to get featured in all these big places, you should be using that in your regular marketing strategy.
Correct.
That's why it's important to have a marketing strategy. Otherwise, you put the spotlight on and then you're not doing anything with it.
Correct.
Right? So
biggest problems. And I will piggyback and add a few more things on your checklist. You should be immediately updating your bios on every social media handle, say as seen in and tag. You should immediately update your website and add a hero section right under your very first section of your website, as seen in. Immediately, you have seconds to win people's trust and to establish credibility. You should immediately be updating websites and websites and bios right away. I would also recommend, if you're on LinkedIn, to immediately go and update your experience or your volunteer, because you can put contributing writer for and insert and tag that media outlet. So you want to build credibility everywhere. And remember, it's more than just a post. Like posts have very short shelf lives.
even the article itself, like I know Travel and Leisure is a big company, but even the article itself, like, is that article really gonna like blow up your business? It might, but the thing that might actually blow up your business is how much you mention it and build credibility on it, right? So it's not so much like the article, like, as a standalone, oh, this is going to fix all my problems. Like, no, like now you have it, like using it is what's going to fix all your problems.
And just for SEO purposes too, like having it hyperlinked. So if on your feed, if you have that graphic of the article, put it on your feed, tag Travel and Leisure, but also hold my hand. You got to put a press page on your website. Told you about this. You got to put a press page on your website and when you do it is when you have about 5 at minimum. And that could be your podcasts. That could be articles. That could be blogs you were featured in. But having a separate press tab allows the user to just go straight to that. Very helpful for those that land on your website to do that. And then you can tag the media outlets. So now the algorithm for the SEO is crawling on both. Now you're attached to their website, and vice versa. So it's really helping your ranking. So we do the bio part. Once we feature you, we change your bios, we give it to you. That's the easy part. I'm not your website developer. I'm not your website designer. I'm not their marketing manager, their social media manager. I will say that we partner with the social media managers for companies, but sometimes we have to remind the social media managers, where's this article in the feed? Oh, so that's our job too, is like we're monitoring.
Right.
That's a big piece.
And I think, adding a press page on the website is critical. And in fact, the Daily Drip is in the process of development to do that too, because it was never something really that we were focused on in the past. We were focused on our homegrown in-house thought leaders, right? But now we're excited that we're working with you, Candice, not only for me, Romy, and the Daily Drip to have a press page and our brand to be showcased, but we're also adding as featured in and press sections on every single thought leader's profile page, so that you can see the content that they're creating for us, as well as where they've been featured. We want Kelly Tolliday's Daily Drip profile page to not only showcase the great articles she's created for us, but we want people to know she's featured in Travel and Leisure and go check out that article as well. So I want you all to know we're practicing what we preach. We are in these developmental modes. And so the whole purpose of this podcast in general is to kind of let you in on our process, our journey, and all the evolution along the way. And this is one of them. So we're entering an era of media. We're in our media era. We're in our media era, and
Our
we
main
are
character
making
era.
yeah, main character era. We're making these edits ourselves. We are coaching our thought leaders to update their profiles, update their LinkedIns, make these adjustments on their websites, and we're doing it ourselves.
Celebrate it. You earned it.
love that.
Showcase that. You earned it. We have this very conscious way of not speaking unless we're spoke to. Don't ask for money. So now we can't ask for the sale, and, don't talk about yourself. But like, we need to stop that.
The humble brag is real. The humble brag.
It's very real. We need to focus on that.
Maybe that should be the title of this episode.
The humble brag. I love that. I really love that.
Thank you guys so much for being here and sharing all of your insights, Candice. Now everybody has a little blueprint on how to go about preparing for media, engaging in media, and then leveraging it, right? So I think we did a lot in this episode. Thank you, Elizabeth, for sharing all your strategies and tactics. And you can learn more about both these gals at thedailydrip.com. You can check out what we do there. And we will see you right back here on another episode of Her Pursuit.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Her Pursuit. You can catch a new episode every other Wednesday. Please don't forget to subscribe or follow so that you don't miss out on any of the good stuff.
We love bringing you free content and value to help inspire and motivate you. So if you enjoyed this episode, throw us a thumbs up, leave us a rating, a review, and send this to a friend who you think would enjoy it. Your support is so important to us, and we wouldn't be able to do any of this without you. So thanks for listening. Talk to you in 2 weeks.